Follow the buzzer. Rest in peace. Woo! The best there is, the best there was, and the best ever will be. What you gonna do, brother? Hey, yo.
Can you see me now?
Strategy my Oklahoma ass.
Life sucks, and then you die.
Hey everyone, GoodOlJM here, once again bringing you another episode of the Jam Report. Matter of fact, this is episode 42, and there is a lot to cover from this week, a little bit from last weekend as well, as some stories emerged after I uploaded a previous episode of the Jam Report, and there are some updates. Hopefully everyone is enjoying their week with the weekend coming up. I know many of us are going to enjoy the extended weekend with Martin Luther King Day. So if you're up in the Northeast, stay warm, stay dry, especially out in the West, who unfortunately got hit with a 1-2 punch of a storm. First rain, and as it moved further east, it got colder, and then the first storm turned to snow, which I believe hit last night in the New York City area. And California right now is still finishing up their second rainstorm, and that eventually will hit the East Coast. I don't know when I decided to become a meteorologist, but I'm just pointing out some facts out there, and I hope everyone stays warm, stays dry, and stays safe. But again, this is episode 42 of the Jam Report, and quite a few interesting twists, if you will. And this is not even an M. Night Shyamalan production, which I was able to see Glass last night, the third installment in Shyamalan's, I guess, superhero trilogy that he's been planning to do for 19 years. Finally came through with Split, and then with the quote-unquote twist ending to that movie, we have Glass. I'm a minor movie reviewer, which I haven't done much of as of late, especially on this channel and on my social media pages. But you don't have to take my word or opinion for it. I mean, I won't tell anyone not to see anything, even if I didn't like it. But unfortunately, I didn't, and the ending sucked for me. So take that for what it's worth. And maybe you check it out over the long weekend, and you let me know what you think in the comments below. But yet, there were some twists, if you will, especially this past week on Raw, which I'll get into right now, as Vince McMahon arrives in a limo, and it was announced as, well, the commentators, that is, and a few online medias mentioned an unannounced or unscheduled appearance by Vince McMahon. He works there. He's there all the time, unless he's got to deal with some kind of medical issue or family emergency, but he's there all the time. So if you're saying that he was unannounced to appear on television, okay, I get that, but don't make it sound like, whoa, I didn't expect Vince McMahon to be there at his show, running his company, and occasionally pop in and out in front of a camera once in a while. But he arrives in a limo, not a stretched one, but looked like a common-sized long limo. And then he just walks into the distance. We cut to the ring. We see Braun Strowman coming down, cutting a promo on Brock Lesnar and the Royal Rumble for the Universal Championship. But then we get Baron Corbin, who seems to be party crashing everyone's segments every week. And he comes down talking about how Braun Strowman let the fans down, and that was enough to entice the monster. And this led into Braun Strowman's chasing Corbin to the back. We don't see him at first, Baron Corbin, but Strowman comes across Elias, and Elias points out which direction Corbin went, as Strowman gives chase. And then we see Corbin hiding out in the limo, the very same limo that Vince McMahon arrived in. And Corbin refused to come out. So Strowman played a little bit of peekaboo and knock-knock, breaking one of the door windows and eventually ripping the door, one of the passenger doors in the back, off its hinges. And Corbin would leave through the opposite side and run off. And dun, dun, dun. Vince McMahon standing out off camera as Braun Strowman spins around and notices, oh crap, this was the boss's limo. Vince basically saying, what the hell are you doing? And bro, as ridiculous as a lot of these segments are with Braun Strowman involving vehicles, whether they're to tip them over or to crash one into another or whatever the case is, there's always at least one funny bit, and this one was no exception, where you see Strowman with the same door he ripped off, picks it up from the ground and tries to put it back in place, only for the door to slowly and eventually fall off back to the ground. And Strowman kind of gave a look like, well, I tried. So for his act here, Vince McMahon finds the big guy, well, the monster, let's stick to pronouns, $100,000 for the damage to his limousine, and I guess for being a really, really bad employee. And all of a sudden, Vince stops, turns around, and pretty much says, matter of fact, you're out of the Universal Championship match at the Royal Rumble against Brock Lesnar. How's that? So out of anger, Braun, quote unquote, flips the limo over, and in the next segment we see him leave the building, bag and all, as Strowman will not be seen in the rest of the show. I'll get into more details on that later on as far as why the match was changed, or at least what's been reported, as nothing really has been etched in stone. Nothing really has been given as a solid answer. But right now, I'll just give with what I came across, and you decide for yourselves. We see a women's tag match with Ronda Rousey teaming up with Sasha Banks, taking on Nia Jax and Tamina. Tamina will tap out to Sasha Banks' bank statement, and we will see a war of words after the match as Ronda and Sasha got into it. Ronda says that she will show Sasha respect by making her tap out at the Royal Rumble. Sasha would reply, but it was off mic a little bit mostly, as she basically spitfires and shows up the sign or the hand gesture of the 4 horsewomen of the WWE, and leaves Ronda stranded on top of the rampway stage area. And I saw this and the live portion of it and thought to myself, are seeds being planted here? I mean, WrestleMania's not that far away, and everyone's assuming that we're going to get a Ronda Rousey versus Becky Lynch match, even though Becky is set to face Asuka for the women's title from SmackDown at the Royal Rumble. Of course, we don't know everyone yet who's involved with the women's Royal Rumble match itself. And, of course, Ronda has to defend the title against Sasha Banks at the Rumble too. So, maybe, kind of, sort of. I mean, Ronda is facing a fellow 4 horsewomen from WWE. And Becky is another member of that same 4 horsewomen of WWE. So it would be interesting, to say the least. And I don't think the 4 horsewomen of the MMA, at least the 2 recent members of the NXT roster, Schaefer and oh my goodness, her name keeps slipping my mind, but basically, the other 2 members of Ronda Rousey's 4 horsewomen. What is her name? This is going to drive me nuts now trying to figure it out. There's Schaefer and Duke. Okay. Schaefer and Duke, who have been part of Shayna Baszler's, I guess, entourage or faction, if you will, down in NXT. And even if they finish up the storylines in the next month or so, kind of like how the most recent call-ups have done, I don't know if they'll be ready. Kind of short notice, and that's not to disparage their talents or their abilities in the ring. I'm just talking about the amount of time to build up. Whoa, I mean, because the fans are aware. I mean, let's be honest. But there are a lot of other people that probably aren't aware of. Wait, there are two different teams of women, and they call themselves the Four Horsewomen. Even though one's MMA, the other one's WWE. So to build up that storyline and get all 8 women essentially together in a 4-on-4 tag team match, not for an Elimination Chamber, not for WrestleMania, maybe towards the end of this year, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, because that would make sense if Survivor Series comes around again and we have a 4-on-4 Horsewomen Elimination Tag match and go from there. But obviously there would have to be the call-ups from the 3 remaining MMA 4 Horsewomen, and possibly, because we got Sasha Bailey and Sasha and Bailey on Raw and Charlotte and Becky on SmackDown. So unless it's going to be another shake-up or another draft lottery anytime soon, I don't think you need to have all 4 of the WWE 4 Horsewomen in the same show, but come across each other or cross paths with each other at another co-branded pay-per-view and come together and say, hey, we have a common enemy. So we have to band together. Even though you're on SmackDown, we're on Raw. We'll meet up eventually again at the next pay-per-view. I don't know. Great balls of fire. And, try to get rid of this menace, or at least dominate or win. Either way, it will be interesting. Can't help but to say, as much as Ronda's been an attraction and very popular, even more so, which again I'll cover a little bit later. But if the match, when it happens, how it happens, which event, I would have to go with the 4 Horsewomen of the WWE. And hopefully no titles should be not on the line, not on an 8-women tag match, but I don't think any of the 4 Horsewomen from either side should be a champion leading into that match. Otherwise, okay, so the focus would be on these 8 women, but the title is what? Similar to how Lesnar's been used, and for a while. Matter of fact, the Universal title, with the exception when Kevin Owens and almost worked with Roman Reigns before he got sick, not only the title being on the show, on Raw, but actually being seen and defended. Goldberg was so limited, he would come here and there for pay-per-views or the go-home show to a pay-per-view. Lesnar, well, we know that story, but at least Owens was there all the time, and the title wasn't at no point was the title not the focal point of whatever angle he was involved with. I think with 8 women, that's a lot of talent there. And either side having a champion, well, that would just the title would be secondary, I believe. But that's just me. Either way, that feud, the 2 factions don't need a championship to start it, much less to keep it going and then eventually end it. But back to Raw, after the women's tag team match here, we see Natalya and Bayley playing peacemakers backstage with Ronda and Sasha after we come back from a commercial, only for the Riot Squad to interrupt and challenge Natalya and Bayley to a 6-woman tag team match, as the babyfaces would need to find a third partner. Yet again, we get the Lucha House Party taking on the Revival. During the match, we get a split screen of superstars lining up outside Vince McMahon's office, all going to state their case and basically explain that they deserve a match against Brock Lesnar for the Universal title at the Royal Rumble. And amongst those online, we see EC3 just smile at the camera and walk away. By the way, this split screen was not shown during the live crowd. And not only would it have taken away from the match itself that we've seen how many times already, but would have given at least some kind of reaction to EC3 from the live crowd. I know a lot of us watching at home were excited to see him finally on the main roster, even if it was literally less than a cameo. But the decision here to do the split screen and no reaction, I just didn't understand that. Well, thanks for coming, I guess. Well, the match itself, the rival with a win over the House Party, and that was that. The next segment, we see Vince McMahon come on down to the rampway, and he steps into the ring and starts talking about who would face Brock Lesnar for the Universal title at the Royal Rumble. All of a sudden, we get John Cena come down. He states his case that it should be him, followed by Drew McIntyre, basically copy and paste here, followed by Baron Corbin, and then eventually Finn Balor. Vince tells Balor that he lacks the beef to face Lesnar. Ouch. And Balor would counter by saying that Vince never believed in him and that he would show him that he is worthy. So he starts beating up on Baron Corbin, and McIntyre and Cena on the other side brawl for a little while. And it will be announced that later on tonight in the main event for Raw, it will be a fatal four-way match where the winner will go on to the Royal Rumble and face Brock Lesnar for the Universal title. Jinder Mahal runs into Vince McMahon backstage saying that he should be the one involved in a fatal four-way. Of course, no one bothered to consider maybe a fatal five-way, but let's go with a fatal four-way because usually five-ways don't make sense at all. So Vince counters and replies saying that, well, pick one from the match, from the four involved in the fatal four-way. I'll put you in a match with him, and if you beat him, you will be added to the fatal four-way match and have an opportunity for the title. So Jinder picks Finn Balor. We then get into the 6-women tag team match as the Riot Squad take on Natalya and Bayley. And who should be the surprise tag team partner for the babyfaces? Why, it's Nikki Cross. Nikki Cross finally made her in-ring main roster debut. That's what I was trying to say. On Raw. And the audience just loved it. Ate her up. She's is it me or are usually the how can I put it politely? I guess the ones that don't keep up with the men's are the cutest. I don't know. Is it unless there's something wrong with me then. Moving on. As the call-ups, it was mentioned that Nikki Cross, Heavy Machinery, EC3, Lacey Evans, and Lars Sullivan, but I'll cover him in a little while. That all talents will be bouncing around Raw and SmackDown so the fans can get to know them a little bit better until eventually picking a brand to stay on. The match ends with Bayley pinning Liv Morgan after doing her version of the Macho Man elbow drop for the win. Cut to backstage, we see Lacey Evans wandering around in a Raw set. And then a promo is cut by Dean Ambrose. And then we get the match between Jinder Mahal and Finn Balor as Balor wins with the coup de grace, maintaining his spot or position for the fatal four-way match later on. And Dean Ambrose himself will come out to the ring to take on Seth Rollins again, but however, the twist here that Bobby Lashley was added for a triple threat match for the Intercontinental Championship. And surprise, surprise, Bobby Lashley defeated the champion himself, Ambrose, to win and become the new WWE Intercontinental Champion. And you know what? I like this move. You know, it came out of nowhere. Wasn't expected. But I know I'm not the only one that always said if the feud between Ambrose and Rollins is going to continue, it doesn't really need the title. And it would have fallen into the same category where the focus is on the angle more than it is the championship. So no one else gets an opportunity, and these guys have been having rematch after rematch after rematch after the Triple H announcement. Well, no longer will we have automatic rematch clauses or whatever, and blah blah blah. I guess there's a loophole somewhere in there as long as the match stipulations are different. It's good to know that these guys can still change their own rules on the dime, on the fly, because it's their rules. But anyway, so Lashley becoming, and by the way, Leo Rush was all over this match, interrupting left and right, being a triple threat match with no DQ. Made sense. Lashley spearing Ambrose inside out, basically, and pins him for the win. And again, I like this move. We haven't seen Lashley hold a title since forever in WWE. He was one of the last ECW champions on their brand. And, of course, involved with the WrestleMania match with Umaga. Let's see where this goes. And I really hope they got big plans for the big guy. And do something with him. I'm serious. Do something. Anything different. Stop making him bend over and showing that ass. We cut backstage where personnel, so some backstage personnel person, was heading towards Alexa Bliss's dressing room to drop off a blinged out, bedazzled coffee mug and hand over to Alexa. He makes it to the door. He knocks. He basically introduces himself. That, hey, Alexa, are you here? And then we see said personnel in shock. The camera pans over, and it's Alexa Bliss, topless, but not completely, as she somehow was able to cover up before the camera pan. So maybe the handler or the personnel, whatever, caught her midway getting dressed or midway undressing. Who knows? Point is, well, my point is asking, what the hell was the point to this? Are we going to see a little bit more raunchiness, a little bit more sex appeal? Is this what they come up with for a talent valuable such as Alexa Bliss? Like, well, you know, you're attractive, you're in great shape. Let's show it off a little bit. I thought the days of Vic Venom were over, but apparently someone on creative decided to get a little too excited and wanted to see this unfold on television. And what's worse about it, there was no payoff for the rest of the show. Kind of like EC3, you know, pop his head open, or not open, but pop his head in a camera, smile, and then leave. And kind of like what we got here. We got to see Alexa Bliss back exposed. And yeah, this makes no sense. I know some people online call it a controversy. Like, not really. This is just stupid. The controversy, I would have seen it as one had they follow up and just made the situation worse and worse. But thankfully they didn't. I don't think they're going to pursue this any longer. I thought they would have, considering that they cut away and we see the announce team. And Cole and Graves looked like a deer in headlights, but only more perverted. And Renee Young was like, okay, this Friday, go watch the movie Glass. Like, no, Renee, you can't ignore that. What the hell was that? And I think seeing the expression of these two guys was worse had we actually heard them. You know, sometimes when they cut away from a backstage segment or an interview or whatnot, then they cut out to the arena and it's a shot of the crowd or maybe a shot of the ring. And then just hear the voices come across your television, and like to see Corey Graves, to hear him the way he reacted, I think would have sufficed. But again, I don't know what they're going for here, but they got their wish. And we get a moment with Bliss was next after the commercials, and yes, she was fully dressed, and she reveals the brand new physical WWE Women's Tag Team title belts. And yes, I have to agree with everyone; they look amazing. I love the color picks the color that were picked to come up with the championships. Obviously, when it comes to the tag team titles, they're going for this Roman gladiator type of design, as the male tag team titles have these gladiator helmets, and looks like the women on the front faceplate has a design of these. I'm not sure they call them reefs, but it's what they were on their heads back in the day. Basically, green leaves made into a headband. I really didn't follow up much of my mythologies, but either way, it looked great. And it was also mentioned here that the new champions will be determined at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view inside of the Elimination Chamber match, as 3 teams from SmackDown and 3 teams for Raw will battle out, and the winners will become the new, and the first time ever since 30 years, 25 years of WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. I say it's about time. I say, well, you finally listened to something good and are pulling through with it. And it sounds like, at least for now, that whoever the champions become, they will bounce around between Raw and SmackDown. And my assumption would be if the champions are from Raw, for example, they lose to whichever team, they return to Raw. Or if when it really shake things up, if the Raw tag team champions, the women's tag team champions, lose to a SmackDown team at a pay-per-view, let's say, or they jump over to SmackDown later on in the week, that the Raw losing team remain on SmackDown. Again, just to switch things up a bit, you would imagine the team would be broken up anyway, and you can have many different outcomes as far as one-on-one matches. So if you have Sasha and Bayley teaming up, they drop the titles to the Iconics, for example. I know I'm fantasy booking here. Sasha and Bayley remain on SmackDown, and then we can finally get Sasha versus Asuka, or Bayley versus Carmella, or whatever kind of mix and match you want to do for now. But again, this is all assuming, this is my take on this, but at the same time assuming that there will be an eventual draft or a lottery coming up after WrestleMania. But back to a moment of bliss here, as her guest was Paul Heyman, as Heyman pretty much put over everyone that's involved with the Fatal 4-Way, as he's not too concerned of who will come out the winner to face Brock Lesnar for the title. And we get Otis Dozovich of Heavy Machinery just pop up out of nowhere, and he's behind the little podium there, the little table that they use to display the women's tag team titles. And he's just saying pretty lady to Alexa. He's bouncing up and down, I guess couldn't help himself somewhat, until Tucker Knight, his tag team partner, comes out and takes Otis away. Okay, there was some reaction. Some people knew who they were. Others weren't sure what to make of it, because it's not exactly what Otis and Tucker were doing on NXT. But okay, I guess sometimes you got to tweak up the characters a little bit. And when Heyman and Alexa just look like, WTF, what the hell was that? All of a sudden you hear the bell ringing in the background, setting up for the Fatal 4-Way match, as Paul and Alexa just leave, exit stage left. Oh my goodness, yeah. It's almost like watching the Emmy Awards, but oh well. And of course, we get the Fatal 4-Way match as Finn Balor takes on John Cena, takes on Baron Corbin, taking on Drew McIntyre. At the end, we see Finn Balor hit the coup de grace onto John Cena, gets the pin and wins the Fatal 4-Way, and it will be Finn Balor taking on Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble for the Universal Championship. And not that Cena needed to cut the promo that he did, though it was very cool of him, but just the fact that, for example, if Cena didn't cut the promo, all he had to really do was step back into the ring, extend his hand, shake Finn Balor's hand, and raise his arm, and acknowledge that, hey, this is the guy. And a lot of fans pointed out, well, Cena never did this for Roman Reigns. Like, well, there may or may not have been bad blood there, but after Cena buried Roman Reigns that one time where Roman Reigns seemed to have stumbled onto his own words doing a promo, and Cena called him out on it and said, hey, it's called a promo, man. You got to learn how to do this if you're going to be the guy. Yeah, it was just complete embarrassment there. But either way, Cena endorses Finn Balor, and I'm not sure if this would be considered passing the torch of sorts. I mean, Cena's still going to be around for a while longer, and Cena was never the Universal Champion, so if just going on his accolades of 16 times WWE Champion, I guess, on World Championships and whatnot, I guess it's more than enough. But it's just interesting that, go for a title that I've never won, that I never competed against. So, and plus Cena's still the quote-unquote free agent. Needless to say, the remaining 3 members of the Fatal 4-Way match are still involved with the Royal Rumble match itself. Over on SmackDown, Becky Lynch arrives to the arena in a rental-car and walks by the New Day and Heavy Machinery, making their, I guess, cross-branded appearance. And it looked like they were blending. I couldn't tell what the hell they were doing, but you see the New Day with their pancakes, and Machinery is just throwing a bunch of stuff into this blender, including raw meat. So I'm going to assume it was pancakes and raw meat blended together, And Becky Lynch is standing there watching this, and she goes, sure, acknowledging that, yeah, she'll take a sip. Well, she actually took a chug of whatever that was, puts it down on the table, and continue with her merry way through gorilla position and eventually outside to the ring, where she cut a promo on Asuka, only for Asuka to come out and cut a promo on Becky. And they both get interrupted by the Iconics, basically trash talking both the champion and the challenger for the Royal Rumble down. And eventually, Becky has heard enough, and she challenges a member of the Iconics, which ended up being Peyton Royce, to a match right there and there. We see Lacey Evans coming back from commercial, watching backstage on the monitor of the match, as Becky will win with the Disarmer. Not to be outdone as Asuka steps into the ring and calls out Billie Kay, shouting in Japanese, and Billie Kay forced into the match, and Asuka will win her match with her Asuka lock, and we will have a stare down between the two women. All of a sudden, we see AJ Styles come down. I like what SmackDown is doing here. Like, they're not really blending one angle with another. It's just like, just get into it. I mean, this one's over for the show, for the night. And instead of cutting to commercial or doing a segue to backstage promo and then come back to the ring, like, no, just let's get into it. AJ Styles just comes down to the ring and essentially breaks up the little turmoil going on in the ring with Asuka and Becky Lynch, as AJ Styles just walks by Asuka and, kind of gives her their cold shoulder. And all of a sudden, Styles just jumps over the railing and walks into the crowd, up the stairway and out to the mezzanine. Come back from commercial, and we see that AJ Styles was at a merchandise / food stand, where we see a bunch of WWE t-shirts and hot dogs and these giant jars of ketchup and mustard, basically countering what Daniel Bryan was doing a week before about the fans just all they're doing, wasting their time eating fatty foods and buying into the fact that you're shelling your life with purchasing merchandise from WWE and blah blah blah. Styles basically saying, hey guys, do what you want. It's your life. He wants a hot dog. And Bryan, dressed as a fan, attacks AJ Styles. Styles will fight back and eventually throw or put Daniel Bryan through a table, ending the segment there. And Bryan, unfortunately, was covered with a lot of mustard. So hopefully that hoodie he was dressed in wasn't loaned to him. We see the Usos backstage doing a photo shoot. All of a sudden, Jimmy receives a gift from Mandy Rose with, of course, a rose and a hotel key. What's Jimmy going to do? We see Samoa Joe walking towards the ring, and he eventually sees off to the side EC3 posing in front of a mirror backstage. Joe finally gets into the ring and awaits his opponent for the night, Mustafa Ali. And even before the match could begin, Samoa Joe viciously attacks Mustafa Ali, ramming him from one ring post to another, through the table, not through a table, but onto the table, onto the barricade. He will walk away only to come back and smash him again through the ring post, really beating the crap out of Mustafa Ali here. And credit to Ali selling the shit out of these spots. I mean, he was thrown into, I think it was the second time he was thrown to the post near the announce tables. I mean, he looked like he ate the damn thing. And wrapped his body around the post and flings over to the opposite side from where he was thrown from. And yeah, great selling here by Ali. You don't see much of that lately. And the match never happened. Match can't even consider it a no contest because the bell never rang, and Joe leaves the beaten body of Mustafa Ali on the ground as officials will pick him up eventually and take him back to the locker room area. We then see Mandy Rose backstage explaining her plan to Sonya Deville about what she's going to do with Jimmy, as Rose wants to make Naomi's life a living hell by breaking up her marriage. Jealousy, I guess. And surprisingly, Deville didn't seem to approve about this plan of hers, but what can you do? Or either that, Deville was thinking, like, well, she made her bed, she might as well sleep in it herself. We see Nikki Cross, fresh off of her Raw debut, now making her, I guess, official SmackDown debut. Not to forget her appearance last year on SmackDown when they were doing the tours of London, England. And shortly after, we see Rey Mysterio walk by Nikki Cross, kind of acknowledge each other, and Mysterio headed to the ring as he will face, once again, Andrade. No longer going to be known as Andrade Cien Almas, as that character, or at least that name, is dead. Of course, continuing the tradition of basically cutting off the middle and second names, the last names of great talent. I don't know what creative and Vince McMahon are trying to accomplish with this. I'm surprised they haven't cut Mysterio's name in half. Just call him Mysterio. But no, he's Rey Mysterio. But actually, they kind of did. They dropped the junior from his name when he debuted, and it's been dropped ever since. So, yeah, this goes back even longer than recent years. But just want to point out something real quick here. It's funny how when Raw matches are repeated week to week, a lot of us complain. I complain too. I'm not gonna sit here and deny that. But it's repetitive and it's boring because there's usually, if it's not because there's no chemistry or the match itself, it's just, what is this? And you can have high spots and suicide dives and all that stuff, which entices and enhances the match. But for some reason, when Rey and Andrade get together and it's one-on-one match, it's like magic. It's like lightning in a bottle. They perform at a high level, and you just don't want to see them stop. I've yet to hear one of those chants at SmackDown, especially, fight forever. And I'm sure they could. I'm sure they can, but it has to be approved first. And I'm watching this match. I'm like, man, this is better than the last one. Why can't Raw do this? Why can't Raw book a match, whether it's a 1-on-1 or a 3-on-2, whatever the case is, and level up the bar? No pun intended to the tag team, but the Lucha House Party has the potential to have a match similar to what we saw here with Mysterio and Andrade. Maybe not necessarily all the time as a tag team or 6-man tag, 1-on-1, which they haven't done much of on Raw, against a team like the Revival. It is possible. I just don't understand what's so difficult about it. I mean, and before someone says, like a Bruce Pritchard, well, until the day comes that you run a multi-billion-dollar company and you know how difficult it is and this and that. Well, honestly, I don't have to. Honestly, I don't need to. Because what's decided backstage as the final product, or this is what we're going to go with kind of thing, and it's presented on TV, and you consider yourselves a TV show, not that Bruce is working with WWE again, not for now anyway, but like other TV shows, sitcoms, dramas, 90210s, whatever, just like they do, you need to expect and receive criticism as much. Usually producers take to Twitter, directors, cast members, they all take to social media and vent their frustrations. And for some reason, when it comes to WWE and someone like a Bruce Pritchard needing to defend it, take it more personal than they need to. Now, I'm sure you've heard it every day of every year you were there, and then some. But it's part of what you guys are doing. It's been part of that. Or just stick to calling yourself just a regular sports show, back to pro wrestling. Maybe not as much, and tone down the storylines and the angles, but basically you're not giving the fans enough credit and not acknowledging their intelligence to figure things out as far as, this is not good. Still waiting for this, shake up, these changes to come. I don't know what's taking so long. It's already been the new year, and we've kind of seen some minor, tiny, little bitty changes, but nothing to a point where things are exciting. I mean, hell, freaking Bobby Lashley won the Intercontinental title. Sure, that's different. That was unexpected, but it was in a triple threat match. Didn't someone promise that we will see and delivered different types of matches? Maybe that could have been an opportunity to present that a different type of match with still involving all three guys and still have Lashley come out as the winner and the new champion. But Yeah, I'll never understand by not running a multi-million, billion-dollar company, but yeah, whatever. Anyway, like I said, the match itself between Mysterio and Andrade was amazing. And this time, speaking of stepping it up, Andrade would defeat Mysterio, this time from the second rope hammerlock DDT, which was awesome spot to see, and Mysterio was knocked out, and Andrade would win the match. We cut to the hotel scene of Jimmy Uso arriving and walking in through the Mandy Rose's room, again using the key that she left him, and Mandy Rose stands up from a sofa chair and removes her robe to reveal her bra and panties. Not attitude era bra and panties, but something a little bit more less, a little bit more or less. It wasn't as revealing, as I should say. Tempting Jimmy to try something, only for a photographer to come out of behind of the bed, I believe it was. He just popped up, snapped off a few pictures, and ran off. And Mandy says that she will use those pictures to ruin his marriage. Jimmy, all nonchalant, is like, "Oh, all right," just leaves. Mandy turns to retrieve her robe to dress herself again, only to turn around and see that Naomi was there. And these two break into a fight. They toss each other around the bed, on the floor. Eventually, Mandy Rose tosses Naomi over the sofa chair and just leaves her. Mandy Rose walks away and just leaves Naomi alone in the hotel room. Hopefully the bill was paid up and Naomi wasn't left with it. Cut back into the arena. The Miz is holding a birthday bash of sorts as Shane McMahon celebrated his birthday the same day of SmackDown this week. And then they get interrupted by the Bar. Shane places the Miz in a match, still in his suit, with Sheamus one-on-one. Miz would roll up Sheamus after Shane throws Sheamus. Wow, jeez, a lot of... Just realized Sheamus and Shane and Sheamus could be so confusing. But the Miz would roll up Sheamus after Shane threw some cake into Sheamus's face. And just to top it off, Shane would hit a coast to coast on Sheamus, literally putting the icing on the cake as the remaining of the cake. Well, there was several actually, but there was one cake the Miz laid across Sheamus, and Shane would fly across from coast to coast and bury Sheamus on the cake, and the show goes off the air. It was entertaining. I was just wondering why the Mysterio Andrade match couldn't be switched out with this segment, because this was the main event spot for SmackDown. But I guess being Shane's birthday, someone backstage must have suggested, pal, what we're going to do? It's your birthday, so here's your gift. You get the main event spot for SmackDown. Thanks, Dad. So, it is what it is. Still, SmackDown, once again, I believe, was the better show of the week. And now we're going to get into some AEW. See, I still got to get used to those initials. Actually a lot of AEW news. First, let's start off with Chris Jericho, as he went on his own podcast, Talk Is Jericho, and explained his involvement with AEW and WWE, or pretty much his status with WWE, to be precise. Jericho started by recapping some of the events of last week's press rally and commented on his WWE status now, since he's signed with a new company. He's not going to be at the 2019 Royal Rumble, not as a surprise, noting that he has done that already in the past by signing with AEW or not won't change the status of that event, because he won't be there, the event being the Royal Rumble. Says the attack at the New Year's Dash on NATO was a one-time deal with room to make another deal later on. Says that he talked to Vince about it and later signed a 3-year deal with New Japan. Jericho said that his appearance at Raw 25 and wanted to stay backstage, and then references the greatest Royal Rumble appearance. It was one of his top 8 paydays of all time. The original plan was a casket match with The Undertaker. Then he signed the New Japan deal and got less than a favorable response from Vince at the time. He realized he was pulled from that particular match because WWE would not give him a spotlight match if he was going to leave for Japan and to be seen on what WWE might see as a competitor show on New Japan Pro Wrestling. He first heard about Tony Khan from his agent Barry Bloom and how he wanted to start a new promotion. Jericho says that he considered a meeting, possibly using it for negotiations or advice. Around this time, he called for the Asper family to ask them to hire Scott D'Amore and Don Callis for Impact Wrestling, saying it wasn't because he was looking to go to Impact, but rather wanted the wrestling business to prosper. He says that Cody contacted him for All In, said he could never do it due to his existing schedule at the time, with Fozzy touring all over the world at that time, actually. He talks about the idea pitched for a run-in during the Kenny Omega and Pentagon Jr. match, and says Tony Khan's jet was how he got to the event back and forth for his Fozzy gig. So there you go, the mysterious private jet now revealed. It wasn't Jericho's, it was Khan's. Jericho also went on to say a bit later on that month, he had a 4-hour meeting with Khan, citing his passions and experience in the business and the NFL. He did have a meeting with Impact Wrestling and thought hard about it and said Impact did not make a great offer, but Tony Khan came with a bigger one, and he ultimately went with AEW because they are showing him respect and they have a lot of expectations from him. His goals and ambitions changed, and he will miss WWE and Vince McMahon, but they need to take chances and always wanted to revamp his career. There was a lot more said, obviously, on this week's episode of Talk is Jericho, specifically updating us on his AEW experience so far, what has come from the Prep Valley from last week in Jacksonville, Florida. But I got to say, I'm still pretty interested and excited myself to see exactly what comes out of this new promotion. Will it be a suitable competitor to WWE? And obviously it already is, and I got a few more stories about that in a little while. I should mention this will probably be one of my longest episodes of the Jam Report here, simply because of what I'm covering today and giving my opinions about it at the same time. So let's move on. Also in AEW news, Cody Rhodes spoke to SEScoops.com and said that All Elite Wrestling leading towards a direction that will see more of an emphasis on wins and losses mattering more, saying that Tony Khan brings a lot of experience to AEW from the professional sports world, and they will want to capture the same spirit that All In brought last year. Cody Rhodes would comment saying, I grew up in the world of sports entertainment myself because my main career experience is with WWE. But when I say sports entertainment, I have a love for the side of the business that skewed more towards sports. You find that a lot in New Japan Pro Wrestling. You find a lot of that in early 1990s WCW that I am always notoriously raving about. I find it a lot in my father's product. The same with Bill Watts. It's more of sports side. It's the more of the sports side of it. Pro wrestling is absolutely sports entertainment, but it's also pro wrestling. And I think that's the direction that we'd like to lean. So there you go. Some already differences in the companies, if you will. And it's interesting to go from WWE many times, especially a lot of their agents, a lot of their producers go on social media. Wins and losses don't matter. 50-50 booking and all those other terminologies. And it makes sense because I believe there was also another quote somewhere in my notes here from Cody Rhodes that they're not looking to hire any writers for now, as the wrestlers themselves will tell the story. And you know what? There's a change of pace for you. For a long time back in the day, even before the WWF took off, in the, I'll say the mid 80s, maybe late 80s, there was a time that there weren't any writers. It's like, okay, who we got the feud here? Usually would have been obviously McMahon himself, Pat Patterson and Pritchard for a while, and they would really get the characters, if you will, the players involved heavily to see where they go with the storylines and the angles. Now it's just everything scripted, and I'm sure that will play off as well, and it will be obviously notable between the two shows, between the two companies. And I know I shouldn't really compare them as much as I am now, or I have been. AEW has really, other than All In, they really haven't done anything and really get the crowd really excited for something to come as soon as May with Double or Nothing pay-per-view in Las Vegas. So call it a little fanboy in me, just, a little bit anxious for another yet alternative to WWE. Lucha Underground still up in the air. I don't always get to see the weekly episodes of Ring of Honor out here as they're usually preempted by another show. I was, since changing cable companies, I no longer have Access TV, so I can't really follow up with New Japan other than what I read online. And yeah, AEW, whichever TV deal they go with, hopefully, again, everyone has capability to it, and we can all enjoy. So let's see what happens. According to RingsideNews.com, AEW already has a very talented roster, but it's a short one and has plenty of room to grow. They are reportedly going after WWE superstars, and aren't many current superstars who are closer to Cody Rhodes than his brother Goldust. Although he's currently injured, Goldust has been keeping tabs on what his brother's been doing. He praised Cody after the announcement of All Elite Wrestling, and he heard during the Barn Burners No Holds Barred podcast that there could be an idea of WWE letting Goldust go early so he can help his brother out at AEW. Also saying that the report from RingsideNews.com, that is, they'll be going after WWE superstars hard when their contracts are coming up and expire. This could put some people like AJ Styles in a incredible position. Again, I'll have some more details on this in a little while, but didn't MLW put out a cease and desist towards WWE from talking to their talent, or preventing them from talking to their talent, even offering them something when their contracts are expired? And I think even MLW has a clause in current superstars' contracts that they are not allowed to speak to anyone from WWE while on the contract, even towards the end of its expiration date. So it's quite interesting to see how things have been shaping up. I don't know if WWE is going to send in a letter similar to AEW, but right now, if it's just the idea or is this just a plan, then really not much you can do about it. But maybe out of pettiness, bitterness, or just want to be a dick about it. Yeah, I could see someone from WWE legal department especially sending out a letter to AEW, similar to how they did with cease and desist using the too sweet gesture. We can't say too sweet anymore because it's trademarked by WWE and blah, blah, blah. Like really, really ridiculous. I understand copyright issues and stuff, but I mean, they've been doing that in New Japan for the longest time with many different members of the Bullet Club. And ironically, a handful of those members are in WWE right now. And they brought over or reintroduced that whole click gesture or hand signal from DX or the NWO. So you tell me that's not really bitterness from Vince's part or anyone from WWE that decided to send that cease and desist letter. Anywho, this brings us to WrestlingNews.com or .co, C-O, whatever. reporting, and again, these are all rumors, these are all speculation, and maybe or may not be true, so take it for what it's worth, at least from the information and details that I was able to gather, especially when it comes to the AEW news, because a lot goes on in a single week, and it's really difficult to keep up with everything that goes on. So, for example, this report from WrestlingNews.co is reporting that WWE will double their talent's current contracts to stay and not sign with AEW. WWE is already feeling the heat now that All Elite Wrestling has officially launched. And for the first time since WCW folded, wrestlers have many options. Ring of Honor has paid significant money to sign Rush, and New Japan Pro Wrestling has locked in some of their talent to longer contracts. Of course, All Elite Wrestling has the backing of Tony Khan, and they can offer massive contracts to sign big names. In the latest Wrestling Observer newsletter by Dave Meltzer, he reports that WWE has told wrestlers that if they can show that they have received an offer on paper from another company, they will beat it and even double it on the spot if they sign WWE's new deal immediately. Apparently, WWE did not offer enough to sign Chris Jericho because he signed a 3-year deal with AEW, and he says that the deal is the best one he's ever signed. Chris Jericho, that is. Meltzer would also say that McMahon is going very hard right now on trying to avoid the idea that people want to leave. They also don't want wrestlers thinking that they can make the move for better money and go anywhere else. And this goes back to my argument from the past, I don't know, let's say a couple of weeks on the JM report. You're signing away all these talents. Like, and there's no secret there. There's no surprise there. McMahon, WWE's been doing that for years. Difference is now, there really isn't, with all due respect to Impact, Ring of Honor, New Japan, and maybe even AEW when they get the TV deal. But I'm not expecting a relaunch of the Monday Night Wars. And it's not something that anyone should be considering anyway. There are many options as far as how to view other promotions such as, again, Ring of Honor, New Japan, and so forth. With streaming networks, of course, you got online options, their own streaming networks, if you will. And when it comes to television, of course, WWE is dominating that market. If AEW, for example, wants to jump aboard on a TNT or a TBS station, the smart move, at least one of them, would be not to go head-to-head, especially not right off the bat. You need to build your audience for a few years, maybe 3-4 years, if not more. And again, do not consider going head-to-head. Look what Impact went through. And I'm pretty sure it wasn't cheap to recover their financial losses when they went head-to-head with Raw for a few months, only to go back to, I believe it was Thursday nights, if not Friday nights. That takes time, effort, and money to move one show from its original time slot and an original day of the week to another. I mean, you just can't pick up and go. No, you got to make a lot of arrangements, a lot of changes. So in this case, all this talent being signed away to join WWE, and for what? Okay, bragging rights to say, well, we have so-and-so on the contract. Okay, good for you. Where is he? Or in some cases, where is she? Where are they if they're a tag team? NXT will probably benefit with a second weekly show, or if not that, because that'll probably be too much as well, making it a 2-hour show. They do a lot in 1 hour. I couldn't imagine what can they do with a 2-hour show weekly on their network. And by that, I mean expose more of the talent that we've yet to see or haven't seen enough of. But we know they're there. We know they're backstage roaming around. Someone check catering. And it's just astounding that to bring up the argument that McMahon has signed away these talents and you're doing absolutely nothing with them. Like, seriously, the recent call-ups, the 5 out of the 6 call-ups, with the exception of Nikki Cross, who actually had a match, they're just cameos. It's like spot the Easter egg. Oh, there's EC3. Oh, there's Lacey Evans. I'm done. Not that I was really trying, but I'm done coming up with excuses for WWE because I would give the benefit of the doubt, and I think that was my mistake. And again, going on these reports, some of them being rumors, you can't ignore the fact that there's a lot of talking going on. One of them being from Brian Saxon of Pro Wrestling Sheets, indicating that Mike and Maria Kanellis have recently asked for their WWE release. According to the report, the couple has been unhappy with how they have been used in WWE for some time now and decided to ask for their release several weeks ago. To add to this, Mike Kanellis has also started selling his own T-shirts via Pro Wrestling Tees, and the report comes on the same day of a Fightful report, which indicates that some within WWE are fearful that the revival may be done with the company as well. Well, guess what? Let's get into that story right now. As the Wrestling Observer reported that the revival did in fact ask for their releases, according to Dave Meltzer. It was said that the team asked for the release shortly after they defeated Lucha House Party on Raw this week, as they were still in their ring gear. It was stated that despite asking for their release, it does not mean it has been or will be granted. And the Observer will go on to say, the word going around is nobody's asking for a release is expected to have it granted for obvious reasons. So, again, there's lots of talk going on. So much that it cannot be ignored. Whether they're true or not, they need to be addressed. I'm not saying in front of a camera. I'm not saying to address the rise and fall of Raw before the holidays, where you had all 4 members of the McMahon family come out and say, in character, we haven't been doing a good job for you. Yeah, no shit. I'm not saying to do something like that to address these stories. Hell, don't even go public with it. Leave it off your social media pages and have meetings behind closed doors if this is what's going on with the Kanellis family and the revival. And possibly Dolph Ziggler. Yeah, there's been an influx of rumors that talent reporting for their releases from WWE, as PW Insider put together on their latest forum, in regards to Dolph Ziggler, has not been seen since losing to Drew McIntyre back on New Year's Eve's Raw edition. Currently, it's being said that Ziggler turned down an offer to become a producer and is now possibly wrapping up his tenure with the company. He has not been on a road with WWE in recent weeks after completing the holiday tour, and sources within WWE are still claiming that he is still under contract, with January 31st as a possibility of his last day under contract with WWE. To the contrary, others have said he is not leaving at all. It's worth noting that Ziggler has changed his name on Twitter to Nick Etham and is currently planning a comedy tour with his brother, as they both put out new T-shirts over at ProWrestlingTees.com featuring himself and his brother, promoting their upcoming comedy tour. So Ziggler's been in the spotlight many times the past few years. Would he leave? Will he stay? What will make him happy? Everyone knows how great of a talent Dolph Ziggler is. He's long gone beyond the days of his Spirit Squad days. And it's unfortunate that he was the only member that stuck around. I really don't know what happened to the other members. I mean, yeah, sure there was Kenny Dykstra, but he was stop and go for a while there until eventually he just stopped. I really don't know what to say to this other than we'll see what happens. And if Vince is that concerned, or talent relations, legal department, whatever, and it's true about these offers, I'll double your contract now if you stay. Okay, well, if I'm going to stay, let me do something. I'm sure they do, but it's just never acknowledged. It's just never in front of a camera. Maybe they do just interviews, or they just show up to do photo shoots, or just have cameos behind the scenes or backstage somewhere. It's just really, really sucks to be wasting all these people doing absolutely nothing. And there's a lot of them. Sure, you got matter of fact, I'm not even sure if they're still doing Superstars and Main Event anymore. Main Event for sure that they stopped doing. Superstars, I don't know. Either that or they just haven't been uploading or updating their videos over at the network. But at least there they could have still showcased their talents and done something. And like, oh, did you hear about that match that Mojo Rawley had with EC3? It was one of the best ones we've seen in a while. Yeah, but it was on Main Event, so you got to watch it on the network. Because God forbid, out of everything they promote and shove down their throats with hashtags and, you get a free month if you join, sign up now, blah, 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 that they don't show clips or highlights. Well, this is what you get if you sign up with the network. And they show a match from last week or earlier in the day and say, hey, this will be available if you sign up now. This match between EC3 and Mojo Rawley. I'm just giving an example here. Clearly, marketing has been dropping the ball like crazy, but no one's asking me. Moving on. Some faces are set to return soon. For example, Harper and Rowan of the Bludgeon Brothers are clear to return to action as both men suffered injuries back in the summer of 2018 following a run as SmackDown Live Tag Team Champions. Rowan was at the WWE Performance Center earlier this week working towards being cleared from a bicep tear he suffered, which required surgery. Meanwhile, Harper was pictured with his cast in his hand following the duo's removal from TV, as the team maybe is back as early as this coming Tuesday on SmackDown Live. This is very interesting. No rush there. By the way, SmackDown will take place in Wichita, Kansas. And they will definitely spike. I thought it did the first time around when the Bludgeon Brothers debuted and was really a wrecking force of a tag team. And when they dropped the belts, I don't think, had it not been the injuries, Rowan and Harper would have been champions a lot longer, possibly into the later on in the year, probably by TLC, if not even now. Who knows? But I really thought they're in the concept of wanting to break another record because they've done that already. So let's just get past it. Right now, the current record is Pete Dunne, I believe 612 days now, give or take, as UK champion. The only one on the record right now, but hey, more power to him. Sami Zayn was also seen at the Performance Center this week, where he is working towards a in-ring return. Sami has been out of action with 2 shoulder injuries, receiving one surgery from one and then immediately on the other, sidelining him for, not that long, really. It seems like forever, but it was around SummerSlam time, so I guess rehab is going really well. Speaking of which, Kevin Owens has slimmed down a lot since we last saw him on Raw, being taken out by Bobby Lashley. As earlier this week, he had a meet and greet of sorts, and fans took pictures of Owens and posted it on Twitter, sporting new tattoos, but his more slim figure, and he looks great. Owens really looks great. Curious to see if he comes back with his same ring attire, which has always been his signature, if you will. But really slimmed down, and will probably make his maneuvering a lot faster in the ring, obviously. But curious to see who, I guess, his first angle would be, or his first feud would be when he returns. Maybe with Sin Cara, because Sin Cara was also seen at the Performance Center gearing up for a return, as he was injured last August with a knee injury, and he's gearing up for a return as well. So let's get into the changes of the Royal Rumble's Universal Championship match. Easy for me to say. Restovotes over on Twitter pointed out the poster of the Royal Rumble did not include Lesnar and Strowman, and that Strowman is not 100% after elbow surgery. However, Meltzer says that Strowman was never supposed to be in the main event for the Royal Rumble against Brock Lesnar, as now Lesnar will face Finn Balor, has been part of the plans for quite some time. The plans began to change around WWE heading over towards Parts Unknown, that show that I don't talk about here, as the idea was set for Strowman versus Lesnar at the Royal Rumble, but Vince McMahon began to change his mind at some point, and the idea wasn't to beat Brock, but for Brock to go over so he could face Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. Spoilers. Meltzer would also say that Vince felt that it wasn't a good idea because Braun was cooling off, plus needed elbow surgery. Vince couldn't afford Braun to get beaten again, and the choices came down for Braun to win the title, which wasn't going to happen, or have a screwy finish, which he didn't want to do, or just not have the match at all. And the latter obviously happened. Lesnar wanted to work with Balor over a year ago now, and Lesnar likes to work with AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan types because they pull the best matches out of him. Meltzer is currently unsure if Strowman has been cleared to wrestle at all, which is interesting. Probably because it was being promoted. I don't know if anyone saw this, but while promoting that new Sherlock Holmes movie, Holmes and Watson, I think it's called, with Will Ferrell and John O'Reilly, or I forgot his name. And Braun Strowman has a part in that movie. And while doing an interview with Ferrell and O'Reilly, Strowman stops by. He walks in, and they have WWE cameras there. He's saying hi. And they were asking, the other two cast members were asking how Strowman was doing because they found out about him having elbow surgery. And Strowman said he'll be fine. He'll be ready to go in a few days, and he has a title match at the Royal Rumble. Now, this was the weekend before Raw this week where McMahon removed him from the title match. So maybe it wasn't planned then, or the ideas weren't changed then until day of the show. Who knows? But Meltzer could be hit or miss at times, and I know a lot of people can say, that's always this cop-out excuse that plans were changed or they changed their mind. I'm not saying it's not possible, but if you really look into it, the timelines especially, and if you find that video on YouTube with Braun Strowman and Will Ferrell, you can hear clear as day Strowman saying that, I have a title match at the Rumble. And again, that was shown before the Raw this week. Anyway, last week there were reports from the Wrestling Observer about Lars Sullivan. Here we go. Apparently he went home from television due to a reported anxiety attack, as the rest of the recent NXT call-ups have had their featured television mentions or appearances already this week. So while rumors continue to circulate about Lars Sullivan, in a report from PW Insider, it was stated that Lars is still under contract following the incident from last week. However, it was also confirmed he was not scheduled to be on TV this week. Meanwhile, over at WrestleVotes on Twitter, saying that something to a similar effect, while clarifying that they haven't heard any report of Sullivan walking out. According to them, Sullivan never actually showed up in Florida when Raw and Smackdown were in the state last week. So there are just rumors at this point. What really happened? Did he leave? Did Lars jump on a plane to go home? It's difficult to say. It is really difficult to say. And we did see the 5 other members of the call-ups already make their appearances of sorts. Lars Sullivan, the exception. And speaking of rumors and ideas for the guy, it was going to be eventually a match, Sullivan versus John Cena on Raw, and to get the endorsement from Cena to Sullivan, establish him as the new big guy on the roster or something like that, and eventually eliminating Cena from the Royal Rumble to start a feud heading into WrestleMania. So again, there were just, I don't know, besides rumors and other stories, I'm not saying they're made up, but these are the only ones floating around. There haven't been any other conflicting stories or updates. But for example, and for the sake of argument, if it was an anxiety attack that kept Lars from television, I really hope WWE approached that in the most delicate way possible, because that's something really serious. And for a man his size, Sullivan, it's hard to imagine. And I think I mentioned this last week as well. You know, you're basically telling someone to go from performing in front of hundreds of people to tens of thousands of people and more watching home live. So that's added pressure. But hopefully, for what it's worth, I hope he's doing well and that we can see him soon and just basically unleash hell on the Raw roster or SmackDown roster too, because we're still getting to know these guys. Recently, Toni Storm was a victim of online hacking, as some private photos of her were leaked online, unfortunately. And this caused Toni Storm to take a step back from social media for a while. However, as this past Saturday at NXT UK Takeover Blackpool, Toni won the NXT UK Women's Championship, and now she has resurfaced on Instagram feeling, quote, reborn. And yes, there was an event last Saturday that did not forget about it. The part where I forgot about is to mention it here, and not forgot about is when I got home to watch it. So speaking of that, NXT TakeOver UK Blackpool, and I'm sure I said that in the wrong order, took place last Saturday night in Blackpool, England, in the Empress Ballroom. And the results, first of all, the show itself was unbelievable. Didn't want to give any results of the TV taped matches that were from this week because I did not watch it, but the pay-per-view itself I did. I sat back and relaxed and enjoyed the hell out of the show as Zach Gibson and James Drake defeated the Mustache Mountain of Trent Seven and Tyler Bates to crown the new NXT UK Tag Team Champions. A hell of a match. Again, all these matches were kick-ass. If you haven't seen them yet, go watch. We then see Travis Banks was taken out of his match due to injuries after being attacked by Devlin earlier on in the day. So his replacement was Finn Balor, and he defeated Jordan Devlin as a teacher prevailed over the student in this match with a coup de grace from Finn Balor. Dave Mastiff defeated Eddie Dennis in a no disqualification match. Toni Storm, as mentioned earlier, defeated Rhea Ripley for the NXT UK Women's Championship as Storm avenges her loss from the tournament for the same title. And in the main event, we got to see Pete Dunne retain his WWE UK Championship over Joe Coffey by submission. And again, all these kick-ass matches were awesome. If anything, there were a couple of botches in the women's match, but other than that, nothing really major or that stood out. And yeah, if you haven't already, go check it out. NXT UK Takeover Blackpool. Ivelisse posted the following on her social media pages, saying that she is asked for her release from Lucha Underground, but the promotion refuses to grant it. She says, I've done everything in my power to avoid having to do this, but at this point, I literally have no other choice. For a bit over a year and a half, I've been battling Lucha Underground to grant me my release. They convinced me to do season 4 under the promise that I'd be released after the season concluded and was still unhappy. They currently are still refusing to do so despite having been told numerous times that they would. This has caused me an unbearable amount of grief for so long now. I really have no words to describe and don't know what else to do. Being legally held hostage while pro wrestling is booming is a matter not to be taken lightly, especially coming from someone who has dedicated their life to do their work. It's everything to me. I am at my wit's end, so at this point, regardless what happens from here on out, at the very least, my story is told. End quote. Ivelisse had previously replied to a few comments on Twitter saying that she would be shedding some more light on the, quote, an injustice soon. She has been with Lucha Underground since season 1 and has also appeared for WWE NXT after her appearance on Tough Enough, along with AAA and Shine. Joey Ryan even backs up Ivelisse's story here, saying on Twitter, I back Ivelisse 100% on this. Prior to season 4, we were told anybody who requested a release would be granted one. Some did and left after the tapings. Others showed faith in the product and now seems are being punished for it. With no season 5 in sight, it's petty to keep anyone locked up. That was from Joey Ryan via Twitter. And I agree. I mean, similar to other TV shows, sitcoms, for example, look at Married with Children. They weren't told about their final season until literally the last minute when said final season was completed and that the show will be canceled. And I mean, that show itself unfortunately had a lot of turmoil leading up towards the end anyway. Hate to see that's what's happening with Lucha Underground. As you know, they build a huge fan base. I got to meet a lot of those wrestlers, male and female, in New York the past couple of years. And they're all great people. They're all tremendous talents. And they deserve to showcase such talent on a bigger stage. Ivelisse is one of them. And I really hope she makes it somewhere, whether it's with AEW or returns back to NXT. But she has options as far as returning to Shine or AAA or even out here in local Florida organizations. You know, you got the WWN, you got the WXW, for example, and thankfully there are options. But when you're locked up like this, as she put it, legally, unfortunately, there's not much you can do about it. Shane Strickland went on Twitter to announce that he is officially a free agent. Strickland has been seen wrestling with Evolve and MLW, has now swerved, quote unquote, his way onto an open market in regard to available wrestling talent. I say good for him. Again, he's someone else with great talent and needs to be showcased around the world. Speaking of which, as per PW Insider, it's been confirmed that Major League Wrestling has signed 2 new stars to the promotion, as CZW champion Mance Warner will be debuting on February 2nd in Philadelphia, whereas former NWA champion The Almighty Sheik will also be making his presence felt. Back over to WWE, Jerry Lawler revealed on his podcast that he has signed a new deal with the WWE, as his old contract expired back on January 10th, and a new deal will keep him with the company for the next 2 years. In the wake of apparent injuries as both Chris Sabin and Flip Gordon this weekend, Ring of Honor has released a statement courtesy of PW Insider stating that they're very sad to report that Chris Sabin and Flip Gordon did both suffer knee injuries that left them in a significant amount of pain. On-site examinations were hopeful, but we won't know more until they are thoroughly diagnosed. We wish them both a speedy recovery, and that sucks, man. I mean, the injury bug once again strikes, only this time over in Ring of Honor. And it sucks because I only recently got to really enjoy the works of Chris Sabin and Flip Gordon, especially Gordon more. Chris Sabin I've always known from a little while longer, but Gordon, man, he performed really well over at All In last year, and hoping that both himself, Gordon, and Sabin do have speedy recoveries, and that surgery won't be an issue, or won't even be considered, I should say. And speaking of the injury bug, there's a couple more stories about that, as the former Matt Bourne and WWN trainer Matt Sydal has officially confirmed that he will be taking a few months off in order to recover from a knee surgery, which will go down next week. Dakota Kai confirmed that she will get as well knee surgery. This took place after her match in a 6-woman tag team match, matter of fact, as Kai teamed up with Candice LeRae and Kairi Sane, taking on Shayna Baszler, Jasmine Duke, and Maria Schreifer. LeRae and Sane ultimately picked up the match and the win without her. But, yeah, another unfortunate time to be injured right now. And some good news. Well, it's going to be a mixed bag of sad, happy, and good news as the show comes to a close. But Killian Dane revealed on social media that he and Nikki Cross are married. The two became a line on screen down in NXT with Sanity, and they've kept the real-life relationship quiet up to this point. So, hey, mazel tov, Nikki Cross and Killian Dane. These secret relationships, I guess, can only stay secret for so long because your family wants to know, your close friends want to know, especially when the big day comes. And social media is a thing nowadays. Eventually it's going to come out, but congratulations are in order for Killian Dane and Nikki Cross. Ronda Rousey is indeed Sonya Blade. During the Mortal Kombat 11 Global Celebration Showcase, behind-the-scenes video was shown of Ronda Rousey doing voice acting as Sonya Blade, thus confirming earlier rumors about her involvement with the game. And I got to say, I caught some of the videos and behind-the-scenes stuff as it was live most of the day yesterday. As Ronda Rousey, Xavier Woods, Zelina Vega, and a couple others were invited. Cody Rhodes and Brandy were also invited to this event. And it was, well, if you're a Mortal Kombat fan, yeah, you definitely would have loved this. They showed a lot of gameplay footage. They showed some of the new fatalities. And wow. Whew. Talk about realistic. But I'm glad to see that they brought back a lot of familiar faces, such as Baraka. Haven't seen him in a while. In a new game, that is. And yeah, it's almost suiting that Ronda Rousey is playing Sonya Blade, and she was also a big fan of Mortal Kombat growing up, and it almost fits the character, at least the way Ronda Rousey carries herself vocally when it comes to giving orders or being demanding in certain situations in the game, and it comes across and like, yeah, you hear Ronda Rousey, but you're really looking at Sonya Blade. And yeah, I'm going to pre-order my game as soon as possible. The game drops, I believe mid-March, so there's still plenty of time. And this is the sad news that I have to report. I did not have the pleasure to meet this man. However, I am friends with a lot of his friends that I met through WXW and WWN, a lot of local pro wrestling talent here in the Tampa area. And I dare say the entire Florida region is in mourning, unfortunately, as Rex Backus unfortunately lost his life and battled to cancer at the age of 35. Backus started his in-ring career in 2015, training with Double Vision Dojo and winning multiple titles in the region. Like many others all day yesterday, from his friends, his co-workers, those close to him, I would like to extend my prayers and condolences to Rex's family. And for those who have been following me for some time now, matter of fact, nearly a year ago, I had my health scare myself when I was told that I was diagnosed with cancer at my age. And I was fortunate enough to be told later on that was never the case. But for even though if it was for a brief moment, and for the record, I do not consider myself a cancer survivor because I never went through it. And it would be selfish of me to say so otherwise, much less even promote that. So please do not get that wrong. But the initial scare and emotions in the beginning to tell my family, hey guys, sit down, I got to tell you something. But, whatever it was that eventually affected me that time period is gone. And I'm back to my normal routines of sorts. But doesn't compare, not even close to what Rex Backus went through and others in his position, with or without treatment, chemotherapy of sorts. And it really sucks to hear about this, especially passing away at such a young age. And may he rest in peace. I'll end on a more uplifting report here, including myself, but many others on social media shared this story and hoping that there will be a positive solution. On a scary but happy note to share, a teenage girl who happens to be the niece of Kurt Angle was abducted in Penn Hills, Pennsylvania, that's right outside Pittsburgh, this past Wednesday evening, but was found safely as of 3:45 a.m. Thursday morning. According to WXPI in Pittsburgh, they reported a teenage girl was taken from her home in Penn Hills. According to the police chief, they told Channel 11 News that the 16-year-old had last been seen in Glenbrook Court Home around 4:30 p.m. on Wednesday when Jermaine Rogers, 19 years old, allegedly abducted her. The girl was found early Thursday morning, and Rogers was taken into custody, authorities said. A Facebook Live video helped led police to the McKinsey Sport home where 19-year-old abduction suspect Jermaine Rogers and the 16-year-old victim was located early Thursday morning. The Penn Hills Police Department Chief Howard Burton mentioned someone called the Penn Hills sergeant to report seeing Rogers and the teenage girl on a Facebook Live video. Using this information provided to them, police were able to pinpoint the location of the house where they found the girl and arrested Rogers on site, who was said to be hiding in a coal cellar, according to authorities. This is just the small details that were available at the time. There was a lot more. Apparently, it's not the first time that Mr. Young Rogers was in trouble with the law, as these two were in a previous relationship, and apparently she wanted out of it, and this upset him. And there were also reports that he was armed at the time of his arrest. So, well, first off, great news. The young 16-year-old girl, Kurt Angle's niece, has been reunited with her family. And this guy, this guy will have his court date real soon, I believe by the end of the month. This also delivers a strong message in a sense to parents and their children, their kids, their teenagers. Basically, get to know who your kids know as much as possible, from their habits to their online social media interactions, what they're into, what they're not into. I mean, I still do that to this day with myself. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean because said person has a political point of view or different political point of view than I do. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to unfriend them or tell them in person and say, hey, I can't be friends with you because this is what you believe in, this is what you follow. No, I mean, that'll be the most ridiculous excuse and cop-out answer I've ever heard of when it comes to ending a friendship, especially one of so many years. If anything, hell, I try to stay out of the political arena as much as possible. But anyway, parents, yeah, I'm not a parent myself, but I am an uncle of many nieces and nephews. And I try to keep up with them as much as possible while they still live out their lives, whether they're knee deep buried into their smart devices or got their heads buried in a computer screen or whatever they're doing now. Anything but interacting with other human beings. But, you know, it's the world we live in now. And I just hope at least said lesson was brought up or acknowledged at some point with the family to be careful next time. And yes, this could have ended a lot worse. Thankfully, no lives were lost in this situation. So that's a big plus for the police department out in Penn Hills, Pennsylvania. And for what it's worth, even Rogers, if he was really armed and didn't use or shown signs that of aggression that he was going to use such weapon, then yeah, you deserve one pat on the back for not being dumb enough to pull a weapon out and aim it towards police officers, because we've all heard too many stories about how they end when it just takes a glimpse of one, whether they were correct or not, and you get shot up 16, 20, 50 times or whatever it is. So folks, again, I can't stress this enough. Get to know your sons and daughters' friends, their colleagues, their co-workers as much as possible. It may sound or seem like you're being a little too nosy, but it shows that you care. And even though it's their lesson to learn, but I think once you cross a certain line here, such as being kidnapped, that's it. The gloves come off. Mom and dad become the Avengers, and we need to find daughter or son as soon as possible. And in this case, with the help of the public, I can only begin to imagine how ecstatic and happy the Angle family is to have their niece back. So congratulations, and I'm glad that this ended really well. And we won't hear any kind of story like this anytime soon. So with that said, folks, it is one of my longest episodes to date. I want to thank everyone for tuning in and joining me. Hopefully everyone will enjoy the upcoming long weekend of Martin Luther King Day. And as always, I say, behave, be good, and until next time, it's good old JM.
Open your mind.